Welcome to the Feral Friends podcast, where we talk everything fitness, wellness, and PCOS. In today's episode, we discuss the system doctors use to diagnose PCOS called the Rotterdam Criteria and why it can feel so inconsistent, confusing, and, let's be honest, super chaotic. Without further ado, let's jump right into today's episode. Welcome to the Feral Friends podcast, where we talk hormones, healing, and the messy middle of becoming your best self. I'm Erica, and I'm here to have the hard conversations to help you move forward on your health journey. And in today's episode, we're talking about the Rotterdam Criteria. And if you have no clue what that is, that's more reason for you to stick around. And my main focus on this podcast is talking about fitness, wellness, and PCOS. And the Rotterdam Criteria is the criteria to diagnose PCOS. Now, I want to preface this by saying I'm not a doctor, I'm not a medical professional. I'm just a girl with PCOS who had to kind of just become her own doctor and learn about the condition and educate herself so she could advocate for herself to get the diagnosis she needed. So if you suspect that you have PCOS, stick around because we're going to dive right into the Rotterdam Criteria and what constitutes as a PCOS diagnosis to clarify everything for you. The Rotterdam Criteria are 3 criteria that's used to diagnose PCOS. So it's 3 categories. And in order to fit the diagnosis for PCOS, you have to hit 2 out of the 3. And within each category, there's a list of qualifiers. And we're going to look at those qualifiers. And you only need to have one of those qualifiers within each category in order to fit the diagnosis. The first one is hyperandrogenism. Hyper meaning a lot, androgens. Okay, so excess androgens. And this can be clinical or biochemical. So you only need one. Number 1 is hirsutism. Hirsutism is excess facial or body hair. So if you have the classic PCOS beard, which I didn't have, so my endocrinologist completely wrote me off, that is 1. You already hit 1 of the criteria. Full stop. Okay? That also counts as body hair, excess body hair. So common ones are on your belly, sometimes on your chest, and I think there's a couple more, but those are the 2 big ones. Acne. Specifically cystic acne. That's the hormonal type. That's the one I had. That's what my endocrinologist should have looked at, but he didn't because he's still stuck in the 90s and he's a chauvinist. Word I won't say on this podcast. So cystic acne, that's here, that's on your jawline, and it's that painful under the surface. If you pop it, you're going to get scarring. Ask me how I know. Kind of acne. Number 3 is androgenetic alopecia. I had this too. It's hair thinning, and it's not the kind of hair thinning that you want down here. It's on your scalp. It looks like male pattern baldness, so it's going to be thinner over in this spot on your head, toward the forehead, and also maybe even toward the crown, general thinning. So those are the 3 clinical signs of hyperandrogenism. If you have any one of those, you've already hit 1 of the criteria of the Rotterdam Criteria. Now, we haven't gotten into the second part of the qualifiers within this same criteria. So the second one is biochemical, and this shows up on a lab test. And the most common lab test is a testosterone test, and to see if you have excess testosterone. And even if it's elevated slightly, that counts. So ask your doctor for a testosterone profile. Another one that's tested is DHEA, which I'm not super familiar with. You might have to do your research on that, but testosterone is the main one. Okay, the second criteria of the Rotterdam Criteria is ovulatory dysfunction, and that's just evidence that you're not ovulating regularly. And this can look like oligo-ovulation, which is infrequent ovulation. It can look like anovulation, which is no ovulation at all. They sell ovulation test strips on Amazon. You can buy them and test every single day to see if you're ovulating. But it usually also shows up as irregular cycles, which is 35 days or more, and it also is highly variable. So maybe you have a 30-day one month, and now it's 45 the next month. I've had up to 52, or maybe you're not it's not happening at all. Maybe you're having missing periods. Your periods are off. All of that counts. And again, my endocrinologist, which I don't see anymore because he was horrible, I said, he's like, how often are your periods? I said, how often are your periods? And I said, about 35 days. He's like, oh, that's normal. It's fine. My brother in Christ, that is not normal. That is not normal. Period. Pun not intended. Anyway, I get riled up. I get riled up. I'm like, how do you still have a medical license? How do you still have a medical license? Oh, and I'm gonna do a little side tangent. I've complained. I went to HR. I went to the higher ups. They did nothing, guys. They did nothing. They just wrote me off as a crazy woman. Like, it's infuriating, and it wasn't worth the battle anymore. So I just stopped seeing him. Okay, within this criteria again, I'm going back on track. I'm refocusing here, locking in, going along with the ovulation thing. Now, this is a new part of this criteria. Is elevated AMH hormone. AMH stands for anti-Müllerian hormone. And what that is it tells you how many eggs you still have in your ovaries. And when you look at this number, please get this tested because it has just been recently added to the Rotterdam Criteria in 2023. And a lot of doctors don't even know this. Because a lot of doctors, I'm sorry to say this, but they do not keep up on current research, especially when it pertains to women's health. So we have to do that. So that's why I'm teaching you. Get your AMH tested and throw the book at them and say, look, this is the Rotterdam Criteria. This is how you diagnose PCOS. Sometimes you have to teach your doctor. Sorry. Hot take, but don't come at me. But it's true. It's true. If they're not the greatest doctor, some doctors are good, but a lot of them don't know. A lot of them just don't know. So you would think elevated AMH is good. You have a lot of eggs, right? You're fertile. Nay, nay, sweet summer child, because when you have PCOS, you are not releasing those eggs that should be released during ovulation. They're hanging out in there. They're immature follicles, and that's what those cysts really are. They're not cysts. They're actually immature follicles that never got a chance to release. All right, a little fun fact for you. Chances are those eggs are not the best quality. So even if they are sticking around, they're not ones you want anyway. I did an AMH test back in May, and my doctor, and this was a good doctor, okay, I'm going to give her credit. She's my OB. She's the one that actually diagnosed me with PCOS and validated me. She's like, oh yeah, you hit 2 of the criteria right there. You have PCOS. I'm like, thank you for listening to me and not treating me like a crazy woman. But she didn't know about the AMH thing. We tested it because we just did a whole female hormone panel, and my AMH came back elevated, like very high in the red zone. And none of us thought anything of it because she wasn't aware of that. And I'm not going to fault her for that, right? She's a great doctor. I love her. But she didn't know. I didn't even know at the time when I did the test. Then I listened to the Huberman podcast, and it brought in this doctor. I'm going to put a screenshot of this episode right here after I record this episode. I would strongly encourage you to listen to this episode because I learned so much from it. And she talks about not only PCOS, but endometriosis as well, and women's health in general. And she's such an amazing advocate for women's health and reproductive health. She reignited all my hope I have in doctors by listening to her. And what she talked about is the fact that AMH is now considered a criteria in the Rotterdam Criteria. That was the second criteria. If you have any one of those qualifiers, again, infrequent ovulation, not ovulating at all, that shows up as irregular cycles, no cycles at all, no periods, all over the place periods, high AMH, all of those, if you have just one, you've hit the second criteria. Now, if you're listening to this and you go, oh, wow, I've already hit 2 of the criteria, you don't even have to listen to the third. You can stop this podcast right now and peace out and do whatever you want today. You've already hit 2. I'm not going to diagnose you, but I'm going to say, maybe get that looked into. All right. Criteria number 3. This is polycystic ovarian morphology. And this is seen on an ultrasound. You would need a transvaginal ultrasound in order to see what's going on in your ovaries. It literally shows you your ovaries. And what it shows is it's called string of pearls, they call it. A string of pearls, which is those immature follicles we talked about, those immature follicles on your ovaries. And if you have over a certain amount, I think it's 20. Yeah, it says 20 or more per ovary, or increased ovarian volume. Ovaries are larger than they should be. Ding, 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 ding. You're the unlucky winner of PCOS. This is another area I had to advocate for myself in. I got this ultrasound for an IUD, but it also showed my ovaries. And I looked at them and I went, those look polycystic to me. Yeah. The doctor summary afterward did say ovaries consistent with polycystic ovarian syndrome. Okay, there we go. There's some written proof. Take that, endocrinologist. I want to tell you this right now. Okay, I don't care what anybody tells you. According to HIPAA, you have the right to the digital images in your health profile, in all of the labs and everything. I'm not talking just the report that your doctor writes up based on the ultrasound. You are legally entitled to the images themselves, and they have to provide them or they're breaking the law. When I tell you it was a fight to get access to those images, to get them sent to me, and I asked multiple times. I asked repeatedly, get it in writing too. And they had never heard of, people had never asked. People don't ask for these sort of things, but I do. And they were pushing back on giving them to me, and then eventually I had to cite the exact laws in HIPAA and say, if you don't provide this to me, you are breaking the law and I will report you to HIPAA. Guys, you have to fight. This is why I started the feral friends community, because I'm a little feral. I'm slightly feral. I'm kind. I'll be very pleasant and agreeable, but if you overstep with me, if you dismiss me, I'm going to get a little feral. If you're breaking the law, I'm going to get a little feral. So that's where I came up with my account name, because I'm a little spicy. I'll fight back. I'll bring out the claws. I'll bring out the law. I will cite those receipts. I'm going to encourage you to do the same. I'm going to empower you to do the same thing. And I'm going to give you those tools. Finally, I got access to them in my patient portal. But I'm telling you, you have the legal right to those images, the actual images themselves. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. So let's run through some case studies. Somebody comes in and they have excess facial hair, but they have no other symptoms. Do they have PCOS? No, probably not. If they come in and they have cystic acne and elevated testosterone, do they meet the criteria for PCOS? Yes, they do. You're so smart. If they come in and they have elevated AMH and hair thinning, do they meet the criteria for PCOS? Yes, they sure do. So, if you got those right, good job. Nice job. And I really appreciate you listening to this episode and sticking around. I hope this informed you. I hope this educated you. I hope this empowered you to fight for yourself and question the medical environment we live in. I hope that you got a lot of takeaways from this episode and you leave feeling better than you came in today. If you love content like this, I would encourage you to follow me. I am only slightly feral on TikTok, Instagram, and Threads, and I am on YouTube and Spotify. And we talk all things fitness, like in the gym, wellness, PCOS, health in general. That is my niche. That is my favorite thing to talk about. And I go down so many rabbit holes in the health and wellness space. It's just kind of my obsession. And thank you so much for being here today. I would love it if you share this episode to others to inform them on PCOS and what it looks like, what the diagnostic criteria look like, in hopes of bringing clarity to your loved ones. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I will see you in the next episode. I love you. Bye.